The sky trembled as the Zorathian warships descended into Earth's atmosphere, their colossal forms blotting out the sun. For weeks, humanity had watched the distant approach of the alien fleet, but nothing could prepare them for the sheer scale of the invasion. Their ships were sleek and menacing, crafted from materials that seemed to bend light itself, as though mocking the laws of physics. No human military force, no matter how advanced, could stand up to them. The Zorathians had conquered countless worlds, leaving behind nothing but ash and ruins. Earth would be no different, or so they thought. From the moment the ships entered Earth's orbit, cities across the globe went into immediate lockdown. Sirens wailed in every corner of the world, alerting the population to the looming threat. Governments scrambled to issue orders, but in the face of an enemy that could reduce entire continents to rubble with a single strike, panic set in. In the heart of the chaos, human resolve was tested. The United Nations convened an emergency session, but their efforts were disjointed. Every military leader knew their forces couldn't match the Zorathian might. Their weapons would be useless against the advanced armor and energy shields that encased the enemy ships. The first message from the Zorathians arrived as a broadcast, its chilling tones filling every communication device on Earth. The Zorathian leader, a tall, imposing figure named Arax, addressed humanity in a voice that resonated with both arrogance and disdain. "You stand at the threshold of your extinction, humans," he said coldly, his voice a low hum that echoed through every corner of the world. "Your world is ours for the taking. Surrender now, and you may be spared as you serve your rightful masters. Resist, and you will be obliterated, as countless civilizations before you have been." The message cut out abruptly, replaced by images of Earth's cities, now under constant surveillance by the alien fleet. The Zorathians had already begun their invasion, sending their advanced drones to hover above major cities, silently marking their targets. Within hours, military defenses were neutralized. Communication systems went down. Energy grids flickered and failed, and cities began to fall into disarray. But despite the overwhelming might of the Zorathian invasion, humanity did not crumble. The first signs of resistance came in unexpected places. Civilians in small towns barricaded themselves in buildings, setting up makeshift defenses with what little they had. In New York, the National Guard clashed with Zorathian drones in a futile but fierce struggle. In London, a group of engineers scrambled to restore power to the city's communications network, knowing that without it, they were doomed. The global response was fragmented, but it was a response nonetheless. Meanwhile, a quiet message began to spread among the people of Earth. It was simple, but powerful. We will not surrender. While Earth's leaders debated the next course of action, a group of scientists and engineers working in secret had already begun developing a countermeasure, a weapon that could potentially level the playing field. But it was still in its infancy, and they had no way of knowing whether it could work in time. All they knew was that they couldn't give up without a fight. And as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, the people of Earth watched the skies with dread in their hearts. They had been warned, but humanity, never one to lie down in defeat, refused to accept the end. This was just the beginning. The Zorathians had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated Earth. As the invaders' ships cast their shadows across Earth, humanity's survival instinct kicked into high gear. The threat was undeniable. An alien race far more powerful than anything humanity had ever faced. But as Earth's citizens cowered in fear and governments scrambled to respond, there was a quiet truth that no one could ignore. Humanity had been tested before, and it had always survived. The Zorathians had no idea what they were up against. History was mankind's greatest weapon, a reminder that Earth had withstood countless trials and emerged stronger each time. The world had been shaped by moments of unimaginable adversity, but instead of breaking, humanity had always found a way to rise from the ashes. These moments of triumph were embedded deep in the DNA of every person on the planet, a shared memory of resilience that now began to stir. The story of humanity's fight against the odds began with the earliest ancestors, who, despite their primitive tools, survived the harshness of Earth's wilderness. It was said that early humans lived in a world full of dangers, wild predators, brutal climates, and constant challenges to their survival. Yet, they persevered, learning to hunt, build, and eventually settle. This early tenacity, this will to live against all odds, set the foundation for everything that came after. As the centuries passed, humanity faced new and greater tests. The rise of empires brought both advancements and wars, with men and women locked in the battle for resources, power, and survival. The Romans, the Egyptians, the Chinese, all civilizations rose, thrived, and fell. But through it all, humanity adapted. It learned to overcome both internal and external conflicts. Empires crumbled, but humanity remained. Then came the darkest period in Earth's history. 2 world wars that decimated entire continents, caused millions of deaths, and pushed humanity to the brink of extinction. Yet after the dust settled, the world found itself rebuilding. The human spirit, it seemed, was indomitable. People returned to the cities, families were reunited, and a new world order emerged. From the ashes of devastation came unprecedented innovation. The birth of technology that transformed the world, from computers to space exploration. And it was the legacy of these struggles that led to humanity's greatest achievement, the moon landing. In 1969, when Neil Armstrong first set foot on the lunar surface, he declared, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." It wasn't just a triumph of technology. It was the culmination of centuries of human perseverance, showing that nothing, no matter how impossible, could hold humanity back. The moon was a symbol, a testament to humanity's unwavering ability to push past its limits. Now, as Earth faced another existential threat, the story of humanity's survival was more than just a collection of historical facts. It was an unspoken understanding that ran through every human's veins. The Zorethians, with all their power and technology, had underestimated something fundamental: the strength of the human spirit. The aliens might have believed they could easily crush Earth's resistance, but they didn't understand that humanity had always fought back against impossible odds. Whether it was war, famine, or natural disasters, humanity had proven time and again that when pushed to the brink, it found a way to survive. As the Zorethian fleet loomed over Earth, humanity didn't break. It stood taller than ever before. From the ruins of war-torn cities to the small villages hidden in the wilderness, the people of Earth had one thing in common: a relentless will to survive. It was this will, more than any weapon or advanced technology, that would be humanity's greatest weapon in the fight to come. The Zorethians might have had the upper hand in firepower, but they were about to face the one thing they could never conquer: the will of a species that refused to give up. In the days following the Zorethian invasion, Earth's leaders were torn between despair and defiance. The world was on the brink of total collapse, cities burning, infrastructures shattered, and the alien fleet hovering ominously above. The Zorethians' message had been clear: surrender or perish. Yet despite the overwhelming power of their enemies, a growing sense of unity began to pulse through the human race. The world's leaders gathered in emergency sessions, their discussions fraught with urgency and uncertainty. A sense of helplessness loomed in the room as military advisors and strategists voiced their concerns. Human forces were outmatched. Conventional weapons were useless against the advanced alien technology. There was no way they could defeat an enemy that could wipe out entire cities with a flick of their fingers. And yet, amid the tension, a quiet voice rose above the rest. President Laura Harris, standing at the head of the United Nations Assembly, her eyes fierce with determination, refused to accept that surrender was the only option. She knew that humanity's history had never been one of submission. Earth had fought and clawed its way through every major crisis, and now was no different. "We will not bow to them," President Harris declared. her voice steady and resolute, despite the tremor of fear that lingered in the air. "This is our home, our people, and if they think we will simply roll over, they are gravely mistaken. We will fight. We will show them that Earth will never surrender." Her words sparked something in the room, a flicker of hope in the face of overwhelming odds. The world's military leaders, the scientists, the engineers, all the people who had spent their lives studying war and technology, now had a single purpose: to make sure that humanity would not be defeated so easily. And so, the decision was made. A single defiant message would be sent. It would not be a plea for mercy or an attempt at negotiation. It would be a declaration. Earth was not finished, and it would not fall without a fight. The message was broadcast across every channel, every radio, every piece of technology that had survived the Zorathian assault. It was a simple statement, but it carried with it the weight of humanity's defiance. A warning. "We are Earth," the message began, transmitted in every known language across the planet. "To the Zorathian invaders, you have underestimated us. We will not surrender. We will not be cowed by your superior firepower. If you seek to destroy us, then you will face the consequences of your arrogance." As the words echoed through the airwaves, millions of people, from bustling cities to quiet villages, paused to listen. It wasn't just a message from the government. It was a collective cry from every human being, a unified declaration that they would not be crushed without a fight. The Zorathian leader, Orcs, received the message with an air of condescension. He chuckled to himself, dismissing the human resistance as nothing more than a fleeting annoyance. The Zorathians had conquered worlds before, and the idea that Earth would pose any real threat was laughable. In his mind, it was only a matter of time before the resistance collapsed under the weight of their inevitable destruction. But what Orcs failed to grasp was something the Zorathians had overlooked in every other conquest. Humanity's strength wasn't found in its technology or weaponry alone. It was in their will to survive. It was in their relentless drive to protect their homes, their families, and everything they held dear. The Zorathians had expected a quick, easy victory, but what they didn't realize was that this was not just a battle for Earth's survival. It was a fight for the very soul of humanity. Orcs's laughter faded as the weight of the humans' declaration began to sink in. He had dismissed them too easily, and now he would pay the price for underestimating them. While the world grappled with the reality of their new, terrifying invaders, behind closed doors, a select group of scientists and engineers worked relentlessly on a project that could change the course of the war. Hidden beneath the remote deserts and secretive military bases, humanity's greatest weapon was taking form, a weapon not built for defense, but for striking back. Dr. Emily Grant, one of Earth's brightest minds, led the team tasked with creating the weapon. She was a physicist, a visionary who had spent her career studying energy systems and quantum mechanics. For years, she had pushed the boundaries of science in theoretical fields, but now she found herself in a race against time, with the fate of Earth hanging in the balance. The weapon was not born from traditional military technology. Instead, it was a marvel of human ingenuity, a creation that fused the principles of energy manipulation with advanced gravitational fields. If activated properly, it could generate a concentrated burst of energy strong enough to disrupt the Zorathians' advanced technology, short-circuiting their shields and causing their ships to lose stability. It was their weakness, and humanity had discovered it in secret long before the invasion began. But while the science behind it was revolutionary, the weapon was still unfinished. Early tests had shown promising results, but it wasn't enough yet. They needed more time, more resources, and a final push to bring it online. The alien forces, meanwhile, had begun to methodically eliminate human resistance across the planet, erasing cities from the map and leaving behind nothing but ruins. In the chaos of war, resources were scarce, and Dr. Grant and her team had to make do with what little they had. Every day brought new challenges, but they persevered. Each breakthrough was hard-won. Each problem solved a small victory in a world filled with despair. Then came the news that sent shockwaves through the team's ranks. Zorathian drones had breached the facility. They had discovered the location of the weapon. Dr. Grant's heart raced as she heard the report. The weapon wasn't ready to be deployed yet, and if the aliens found it, they would destroy it before it could even be tested. Panic spread among her team, but she knew they couldn't afford to back down. They had spent months building this technology in secret, and now they had to push forward no matter the cost. "We don't have a choice," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "We finish it, now." Within hours, the team scrambled to make the final adjustments, their hands moving with practiced precision. Engineers worked tirelessly to link the core energy conduits to the main power source, while Dr. Grant adjusted the calculations to ensure the weapon would have maximum impact. Every moment was precious. Meanwhile, the Zorathian forces, led by their commander Arax, continued to bombard Earth's major cities, wiping out resistance and securing their foothold. They were certain victory was within their grasp. Little did they know, the humans were preparing to unleash a weapon that could change everything. In the darkness of their hidden lab, the weapon hummed to life, its core glowing with the raw energy of the universe itself. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a symbol of humanity's will to survive. This was no longer just a fight for Earth's survival. It was a fight for humanity's place in the galaxy. As the weapon powered up, Dr. Grant stood back, watching with a mixture of awe and anxiety. The Zorathians had made a grave mistake. They had thought they could crush Earth with ease. But they hadn't accounted for one thing: humans would never go down without a fight. And now, humanity's greatest weapon was ready to show them exactly what that meant. The Zorathian war machines had advanced far beyond Earth's most powerful weapons, and their relentless assault seemed unstoppable. Cities were reduced to rubble, resistance movements were crushed, and Earth's military forces had been scattered and decimated. The world was on its knees, and yet humanity had not given up. In the midst of this destruction, the weapon that Dr. Emily Grant's team had worked so tirelessly to complete was ready for its first test. The coordinates were set, and the final adjustments were made. Earth's hope now rested on a fragile, unproven system. It was a calculated risk, but it was the only chance they had. The first target was a Zorathian supply ship hovering over a devastated region in Europe. It had been an observation platform for the aliens, a symbol of their overwhelming dominance. Now, it would be humanity's proving ground. As the countdown began, Dr. Grant stood in the command center, watching the monitors flicker with activity. She felt a mixture of fear and anticipation in her chest. Would it work? Would it be enough? "Ready," one of the technicians said, his voice tight with tension. Dr. Grant gave a quick nod. "Fire." With a thunderous pulse, the weapon fired. A brilliant burst of energy shot into the sky, a column of pure light that pierced the atmosphere and collided with the Zorathian ship. The energy wave crackled as it slammed into the alien vessel, sending shockwaves through the air. The ship's shields flickered, then faltered, and within seconds, the massive craft erupted in a burst of flames. The ship's systems collapsed, and it fell from the sky, crashing into the ground in a ball of molten metal and debris. A stunned silence hung in the air for a moment. Then, as the images of the explosion flickered on the screen, the room erupted in cheers. It had worked. The weapon had worked. Across the globe, news spread like wildfire. The first major victory for humanity had been achieved. The Zorathian forces had just been dealt a blow they never saw coming. For the first time since the invasion began, Earth's resistance had found a crack in the seemingly impenetrable armor of the alien invaders. But the battle was far from over. The Zorathian fleet, stunned and enraged by the loss of their supply ship, retaliated with all their might. They launched a counteroffensive, sending waves of drones and assault ships to wipe out human resistance once and for all. Yet, in their fury, they underestimated the impact of the victory. The destruction of the Zorathian ship was not just a military success. It was a symbol of human ingenuity and defiance. It ignited a spark in every human heart. People all over the world, from soldiers to civilians, felt a renewed sense of purpose. The invaders had underestimated humanity's ability to fight back. And now, the tide was beginning to turn. In every city and every country, pockets of resistance began to organize. People took to the streets, armed with whatever weapons they could find. The military regrouped, bolstered by the newfound hope and belief that victory was possible. The Zorathians, once confident in their superiority, now found themselves facing an enemy that was far more resilient and resourceful than they had ever imagined. Dr. Grant's weapon had opened the door for humanity to push back, but the real battle was just beginning. Earth's forces now had a fighting chance, and they would make the most of it. The aliens had started this war, but it was humanity's turn to show them what true resilience looked like. In every corner of the world, from the ruins of destroyed cities to the hidden bunkers where Earth's last hope for survival lay, the message was clear: humanity would not be conquered. The tide had begun to turn, and the Zorathians were about to learn that Earth was not a planet to be underestimated. The victory at the Zorathian supply ship had sent shockwaves through both Earth and the alien forces. Humanity, once fractured and hopeless, now found itself bound together by a single purpose: to drive the invaders off their planet. What had started as a scattered, desperate resistance was quickly becoming a unified global force, and the Zorathians, overconfident in their superiority, had made a costly mistake, underestimating the strength of humanity when faced with annihilation. As the weeks passed, the momentum shifted. The world's military leaders, once disoriented and fractured, now coordinated their efforts under a single banner: the United Earth Resistance. Satellites, communication systems, and underground bunkers were repaired and activated. Soldiers, engineers, and ordinary civilians worked side by side, constructing new weapons, crafting defensive strategies, and planning counterattacks. What had seemed like a planet on the brink of collapse now thrived with the spirit of unity and determination. Dr. Emily Grant and her team became the heart of the Resistance's scientific arm. They worked around the clock to refine the weapon, making it stronger, faster, and more effective. After the success of the first strike, humanity now had an advantage: knowledge of the Zorathian technology, including their shields, their weaponry, and their vulnerabilities. It was a new kind of warfare, one that required innovation, improvisation, and the will to adapt quickly to the ever-evolving threat. But it wasn't just the military and the scientists who drove the resistance forward. Every part of society contributed. In the ruins of New York City, former police officers led civilian militias, organizing ambushes against Zorathian patrols. In London, former engineers and mechanics rebuilt damaged vehicles, turning them into makeshift battle tanks for the resistance. In Africa, local tribes worked together to set traps, using their knowledge of the land to slow the invaders. Farmers, teachers, doctors, all played their part, lending their expertise, courage, and resourcefulness to the cause. The world's unity was astonishing. Nations that had been at odds for decades put aside their differences to fight a common enemy. The United Nations, once a symbol of diplomacy and debate, now served as the central hub for coordinating resistance efforts. Military leaders from every corner of the globe formed a council, working together to plan the next stages of the war. As humanity's resolve solidified, the Zorathians began to feel the pressure. The alien commanders, led by Orcs, underestimated Earth's ability to adapt. Their once perfect strategy of overwhelming power was now being countered by tactics and techniques they hadn't anticipated. While Zorathian drones still rained down on the planet, they were met with organized defenses that inflicted serious damage. And the weapon, still being refined by Dr. Grant and her team, became more deadly with each passing day. The Zorathians launched an offensive to regain control of key strategic cities, thinking they could crush the resistance with one final blow. But what they failed to understand was that humanity had become something more than a collection of individuals fighting to survive. Earth had become a single living organism, pulsating with the collective strength of its people. They had no intention of letting this alien threat take their world. And so, in the dim light of underground bunkers and the wreckage of once great cities, the resistance prepared for the next phase. Their plans were no longer defensive. They were strategic strikes, a series of coordinated attacks designed to weaken the Zorathian hold on the planet. Every day, the resistance grew stronger, more organized, and more determined. And every day, the Zorathians grew more frustrated and desperate. The war had changed. Humanity had found its strength. The Zorathians had awakened a sleeping giant. And now, they would see what Earth was truly capable of. The momentum was shifting. Humanity's resistance had grown stronger with every passing day. And the Zorathian forces, once so confident in their overwhelming power, were beginning to falter. But the war was far from over. As Earth's resistance continued to strike back, the Zorathians launched an all-out campaign to crush the last remnants of human defiance. Cities were obliterated, and entire regions were scorched by relentless bombardment. Yet, despite the devastation, humanity's resolve remained unbroken. The Zorathians knew they had only one chance left to end the conflict. Their supreme commander, Orcs, called for a full-scale invasion of Earth's major cities, determined to crush the resistance once and for all. He believed that by taking control of the most significant global hubs, he could break humanity's will to fight and force a surrender. But what Orcs didn't understand was that Earth's greatest strength lay not in its cities or military might. It lay in the hearts and minds of its people. As the alien fleet prepared to descend on Earth's largest remaining stronghold, New York City, Dr. Emily Grant and her team faced an impossible choice. The weapon they had created was now powerful enough to inflict massive damage on the Zorathian ships, but it had never been used on such a large scale. If they fired it at the heart of the alien fleet, it might destroy the Zorathians' control ships and disrupt their command structure. But it could also unleash an uncontrollable surge of energy, causing catastrophic damage to Earth itself. There was no guarantee that it would work, and if the weapon failed, Earth could face destruction on an unimaginable scale. Yet, as the final countdown for the Zorathian assault loomed, Dr. Grant knew there was no other option. The fate of humanity rested on one final desperate gamble. "We have no choice," Dr. Grant said quietly, her voice steady despite the weight of the decision. "We can't win if we don't take this risk." Her team, once uncertain, now stood with her, their faces hardened by the months of struggle and loss. They knew the stakes. If they didn't act, humanity was doomed. The time had come to use their ultimate weapon, no longer just a defensive tool, but the key to their survival. The weapon was reconfigured for the final assault. Every available resource was poured into the launch, every system checked, calibrated, and recalibrated in a race against the clock. Outside the lab, Earth's resistance forces gathered for what they knew would be their final stand. They prepared for battle, knowing full well that if the weapon failed, it could be the end for them all. But they had faith in humanity's ability to survive, and faith in the brilliance of the weapon that had already shown its power once before. As Dr. Grant looked out over the makeshift command center, her mind raced with calculations. The weapon had to be perfectly timed. One mistake could mean the loss of everything. She took a deep breath, steadying her nerves. "Ready," she said, signaling to the team. The countdown began. With a thunderous hum, the weapon powered up, its energy core thrumming with raw power. Above the Earth, the Zorathian ships gathered in formation, ready to strike. The final confrontation was moments away. And with it, the ultimate gamble. The future of the human race now rested on the shoulders of one weapon, one shot, one hope. The weapon was fired. The weapon surged to life, its energy crackling in the air as it discharged into the vastness of space. A brilliant pulse of light streaked through the sky, cutting through the atmosphere and heading directly toward the Zorathian fleet. The Zorathians, in their arrogance, had not expected Earth to possess such a powerful weapon, and their commanders were caught off guard. For a split second, time seemed to stretch into eternity as the weapon's energy collided with the heart of the alien fleet. The first few moments were chaotic. Zorathian ships began to shimmer and flicker, their shields flickering out of existence in the face of the raw energy blast. The colossal ships staggered in midair, their precision and coordination crumbling as the weapon's surge disabled their systems. But the true devastation began when the energy reached the command ships, the central nervous system of the entire Zorathian invasion. The command ship at the center of the fleet, the vessel where Orcs had been directing the destruction, suddenly buckled under the intensity of the energy. It seemed as though the ship was disintegrating from within, the metal groaning and warping under the pressure. Explosions erupted from within the ship, and the vessel began to tumble, losing altitude as it spiraled out of control. On the ground, Earth's resistance watched in stunned silence as the alien fleet began to unravel. They could see the flash in the sky, feel the tremor of the energy pulse reverberate through the air. It wasn't just the destruction of one ship, it was the beginning of the collapse of the entire Zorathian command structure. Yet, the consequences of the weapon's activation were not without their cost. As the pulse continued to ripple through space, the weapon's power began to destabilize. The energy, designed to neutralize Zorathian technology, now began to overload its systems. The resistance forces, both on Earth and in their remaining safe zones, had no way of knowing if the weapon could contain the energy it had unleashed. The very power that had given them hope could also tear apart the planet that they fought so hard to protect. Back in the underground facility, Dr. Emily Grant's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the readings on her monitors. The core of the weapon was unstable, far more than they had ever anticipated. The team worked feverishly, trying to stabilize the energy core before it could spiral out of control. But as the seconds passed, it became clear that there was no simple solution. The energy surge was growing, and the weapon's massive power would soon be beyond their ability to control. "We need to shut it down," one of the engineers yelled, panic creeping into his voice. Dr. Grant's hands moved quickly across the control panel. There was no time to manually intervene. The weapon was already too far gone. "We can't," she said, her voice low, defeated. "We've already set it in motion. All we can do now is pray it's enough." At that moment, a sudden shift occurred. The Zorathian ships, now disorganized and crippled, began to retreat. The once imposing alien fleet, now a shadow of its former strength, turned away, abandoning the assault on Earth. Arax's ship, the symbol of the Zorathian conquest, fell silent as it crashed into the ocean, finally extinguishing the last vestiges of the alien threat. For a brief moment, Earth's defenders dared to believe it was over, that they had won. Then, the ground trembled. The energy core of the weapon surged one final time. The pulse of light that had saved humanity now began to burn through the very fabric of the Earth itself. The weapon's final consequence, its uncontrolled power, could not be contained. But as the world teetered on the edge of collapse, something unexpected happened. The energy surged not to destroy, but to rebuild. Earth, its core shaken but resilient, began to heal. The weapon had irrevocably changed the planet, but it also gave rise to a new beginning. Humanity had faced extinction. They had fought, sacrificed, and struggled to survive. And in the end, they had not only defeated their alien invaders, they had given their world a second chance. As the sun rose on a new, uncertain dawn, humanity stood victorious, not just against the Zorathians, but against the very forces of fate itself.